Relax, it is just a prank, I said, laughing as my old bones shook on the sofa. The children around me were laughing too, holding their phones and recording my grandma acting for the internet. I had fake tears on my cheeks, a scarf tied around my mouth like in a movie, and my hands loosely tied with a long cord from the iron. Help me, I cried in a dramatic voice, then burst into laughter again. My grandchildren have kidnapped me. Somebody, call the police, I joked. They laughed even harder. The living room was full of noise. The television played in the background, but nobody cared. It was all about the prank. They wanted it to look real. They wanted views. They wanted comments and likes. I just wanted to feel like a fun grandma, not an old woman in a quiet house. Grandma, that was perfect, Ethan said, his brown eyes sparkling. Say it again, but this time sound more scared. Are you sure? I asked. People might believe it. Relax, Grandma, Lily said, giggling. Everyone knows it is just a joke. It is for our channel. So I did it again. I shouted louder. I wriggled and pretended to fall off the chair. Ethan added a scary caption on the screen. Lily added fake crying sounds. The younger one, Max, was in the corner laughing so hard his little belly shook. They replayed the video and laughed again and again. None of us noticed the open window. None of us noticed Mrs. Parker, my neighbor, standing outside, her eyes wide, her mouth open. She looked straight through the window at me on the chair, with my hands tied and my scarf over my mouth. Her face turned pale. She dropped her shopping bag. Then she disappeared. Inside, we were still laughing when the first knock came. It was not a gentle knock. It was heavy, strong, serious. It shook the front door. Boom, boom, boom. We all froze. My fake tears suddenly felt real. Who is that? Max whispered. The knock came again, louder this time. Boom, boom, boom. Open up. Police. A deep voice shouted from outside. All the laughter died in 1 second. The room became cold and quiet. Lily's phone slipped from her hand and fell to the floor. Ethan stared at me, his mouth open, his face suddenly empty of color. Grandma, he whispered, they think it is real. I could hear a second voice outside. I could hear radios. I could hear footsteps on the gravel. I heard another shout. Ma'am, we received a report of a possible kidnapping inside this house. Open the door now. My heart started to beat fast and hard. My fake ropes were still around my hands. The scarf was still around my mouth. The living room was a mess. The silly caption, "Grandma has been kidnapped," was still paused on the television screen from their test. For the first time that night, nobody laughed. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. Children, I whispered, stay behind me. Do not say anything yet. I took one small step toward the door. Just then, the doorknob turned from the outside. The door began to open. I know you want to know what happened next. But before I tell you what the police saw when that door opened, I must tell you how we got there in the first place, because that night did not start with sirens and fear. It started with something much smaller and much more dangerous, wanting to be popular at any cost. It began that morning, when the sun was bright and soft, and the world felt peaceful. I woke up with my usual back pain and the smell of coffee in the kitchen. I checked my old clock. It was past 8. I could already hear birds outside and cars passing in the distance. It was a school holiday, and my grandchildren were staying with me for a week. That always made me feel young again, even if my knees did not agree. I put on my slippers and walked to the kitchen. Ethan was sitting at the table, scrolling on his phone. Lily was recording herself in the mirror, practicing some kind of dance. Max had cereal all over the table and half in his mouth, half on his shirt. Good morning, my troublemakers, I said, kissing each of them on the head. Morning, Grandma, they all said in different sleepy voices. Ethan put his phone down. Grandma, guess what? What? I asked, pouring myself some coffee. Our prank video yesterday got 2,000 views, he said proudly. 2,000. I raised my eyebrows. For just pretending to spill juice on my dress. He nodded. People like pranks. If we do bigger ones, we can go viral. Lily jumped in. We want to be famous, Grandma. You know, like those families online that everybody watches. We can call our channel, Grandma Squad, or something. I laughed. Me, famous, at my age, why not? Ethan said. People love funny grandmas. You were already funny. Very funny, I said, rolling my eyes. But a small, warm feeling grew in my chest. The idea that my grandchildren wanted me in their videos made me feel special. They were choosing me, not pushing me away like an old toy. Okay, I said. What do we have to do? They all looked at each other. We need a big prank, Ethan said softly. Something shocking. Something that makes people stop scrolling. The way he said it made me a little uneasy, but I did not show it. I took a sip of my coffee and asked, what kind of prank? We will think of one, Lily replied. Nothing bad, Grandma, just something funny. After breakfast, we cleaned the dishes, and the day moved slowly. The children played games, watched cartoons, and went out to ride their bikes. I sat on the front porch with my knitting and watched them. My neighbor, Mrs. Parker, walked by with her shopping bag. She was a serious woman with sharp eyes and a mouth that rarely smiled. She believed rules were more important than laughter. Good morning, Naomi, she said. That was my name, though most people just called me Grandma. Good morning, Ruth, I replied. Nice day, is it not? She nodded but did not comment on the children playing loudly. She never liked noise. She liked order. Are those your grandchildren again? She asked. Yes, I answered proudly. They are staying with me for the week. She adjusted her glasses. Children these days spend too much time on phones. They record everything and respect nothing. I smiled politely. They are good children, just a bit active. She sniffed and walked on. I watched her go and shook my head. If the world had no laughter, it would be a very sad place. Later in the afternoon, the children came back inside, faces shining with sweat and excitement. Grandma, we have the perfect prank idea, Ethan announced. Oh no, I said, half joking, half worried. What is it? He sat in front of me. We will pretend that we tied you up, like you were kidnapped, but you are actually safe, and at the end, we show you laughing and eating cookies. People will know it is just a prank. Lily clapped her hands. It will look dramatic at first, but then it becomes funny. My first reaction was to say no. The word was already on my tongue. What if someone does not understand it as a joke? What if children watching try to copy it? But then I saw their faces. Big eyes, wide smiles, excited hearts. They wanted me to be part of something that mattered to them. Will anyone be scared? I asked carefully. It is just acting, Grandma, Ethan said. We will put text on the screen saying, prank, at the end. Everyone does it. Yes, everyone does it, is not always a good reason, but I forgot that for a moment. Instead, I thought about how happy they were when they got views. I thought about how they showed my friends at church our videos and said, that is my grandma. Maybe one little prank could not hurt. All right, I said, but we keep it inside the house. No shouting outside, no pranking strangers. Okay, they all shouted. That was my first mistake. Inside the house, they started planning like little movie directors. They cleared a space in the living room. They moved the coffee table, arranged the chairs, and checked where the light from the window fell. Grandma, we will sit you here, Lily said, pointing to a plain chair in the center of the room. Should I be scared? I asked. Yes, Ethan said, very scared. You have to act like someone tied you, but you are too strong inside to give up. You were a cool grandma. I laughed. I have never been tied up in my life, and now I am doing it for the internet. Max brought a long cord from the iron. We will not tie it too tight, he said softly. We do not want to hurt you. I watched their small hands wrap the cord around my wrists. It was not tight. I could pull out easily if I wanted. They knew I was old. They were careful. That part made me feel safe. Then Lily tied a scarf gently around my mouth, like in movies where people get kidnapped. There, she said. Now you look like it is serious. We practiced the lines. I would wriggle, make muffled sounds, and then they would stand behind the camera and say silly things like, give us all your cookies and we will free you. At the end, I would burst out laughing, pull the scarf off, untie the cord, and hug them. Then we would show the text on the screen, do not try this at home. It is a prank. That was the plan. We did not plan for Mrs. Parker. We did not plan for open windows. We did not plan for fear. The first rehearsal was messy. I forgot my lines. Ethan dropped the phone. Max started laughing too early. We all laughed so hard that my sides hurt. The second try was better. On the third try, everything went wrong in the best and worst way. Ethan pressed record. Okay, Grandma, go. I pulled on the cord and made a muffled sound. Help me, I said through the scarf, trying not to smile. Stop smiling, Lily hissed behind the camera. It has to look real. I grew serious and widened my eyes. Help, I cried louder. Give us your cookie recipes, and we might let you go, Ethan joked. The children laughed. I wriggled more and shouted louder, so loud that my words rolled out of the open window. Somebody, call the police. I cried, trying to sound like a movie actress. They loved that line. They told me to repeat it. I did, again and again, louder each time, the words bouncing off the walls and spilling into the street. We were in our own world, a world of jokes and lights and phones. Outside, someone was listening who was not in on the joke. As I finished my last dramatic cry, we all burst into laughter. I leaned back on the chair, tears of joy in my eyes. My chest felt light. For a few seconds, I was not just an old woman. I was a star in my grandchildren's movie. That was perfect, Ethan said. Grandma, you are amazing. Relax, I said, waving my tied hands. It is just a prank. We were still laughing when I heard a faint sound outside. A car door closing. Another one. Voices. But the television was loud, and the children were talking, so I did not pay attention. Let us watch it, Lily said, grabbing the phone and stopping the recording. She replayed the clip, and we huddled close to look at it. Wow, Max said. It looks so real. I smiled, but a small, strange feeling touched my heart. Real. Too real. Maybe we should put a big warning at the start, I said. So people do not get upset. We can do that later, Ethan replied. For now, let us just enjoy how good it is. They started to argue about what music to add. Soft music or scary music. I was about to give my opinion when that first knock shook the house. Boom, boom, boom. We all jumped. Who is that? Lily asked. The knock came again, even louder. Open up. Police. My heart dropped. My mind went blank for a second. Then everything became too clear. Police. Max whispered, his eyes big and round. I looked at the window. The curtains were open. Anyone outside could still see me on the chair, hands tied, scarf around my mouth. The television screen still showed a paused frame with the words, "Grandma has been kidnapped," written across the bottom. Another knock. Another shout. Ma'am, we received a call about a woman being held against her will inside this house. Open the door now. I pulled my hands free of the cord so fast that it burned my skin. Lily rushed to untie the scarf from my mouth. Ethan grabbed the phone and closed the video. Grandma, what do we do? He asked, his voice shaking. I stood up, though my legs felt like jelly. We face it, I said quietly. We tell the truth. I took a deep breath, walked toward the door, and reached for the handle. Before I could touch it, the doorknob turned from the outside. The door flew open, and two police officers stepped inside, eyes sharp, hands ready. One of them looked at me. The other looked at my grandchildren. Then his gaze moved to the television screen, where my frozen face still showed fear and fake tears. Everybody, stay exactly where you are, the officer said in a firm voice. No one moves. My grandchildren gasped. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. That was the moment I realized something very simple and very hard. Just a prank, was no longer just a joke. It had become something real, something serious, something that could change our lives. The officer took one step closer, his eyes fixed on me. Ma'am, he said slowly, are you in danger? And before I could answer, before I could explain, before I could say a single word to fix our foolish mistake, Mrs. Parker appeared in the doorway behind them, pointing at me with a shaking hand. There, she said. That is her. I saw her tied up. They were holding her captive. The room spun a little. My grandchildren started to cry. And in that heavy, sharp silence, everything we thought was funny turned into something else. Something we were not ready for. The room felt frozen. The police officers stood firm, their boots planted on my carpet. My grandchildren huddled behind me like frightened little birds. Mrs. Parker was still pointing with her thin, shaking finger as if she was afraid I would vanish into thin air. "Step back, ma'am," the second officer said gently to her. "We need to assess the situation." Assess the situation. Those 3 words hit harder than their knocks on the door. The taller officer, the one who first shouted outside, looked straight at me. His eyes were sharp but not unkind. He studied my face, my hands, the now loose cord on the chair, the scarf on the floor. He was trying to understand everything in one glance. "Ma'am," he repeated, "are you hurt? Were you tied up against your will?" I opened my mouth, but before a sound came out, Ethan shouted from behind me. It was a prank. We were just making a video. His voice cracked, and tears ran down his cheeks. Lily clutched his arm and nodded quickly. "Yes, officer," she said, her voice trembling. "We didn't mean anything bad. Grandma was acting." Max was crying too hard to speak. He hid his face behind my dress. The officers did not move. They did not relax. They just looked at each other. "Ma'am," the taller officer said again, "we need to hear it from you." I stepped forward. My hands were shaking so much I had to hold them together. "It was a prank," I said slowly. "A silly prank. I was acting. I agreed to everything. No one forced me. No one hurt me. These children would never do such a thing." Mrs. Parker gasped loudly. "Acting," she cried. "You were crying for help. I heard you. I saw you tied up. Do not lie to protect them." I turned to her. She had never liked noise, but she had always been protective in her own strange way. She believed rules were the wall that kept the world safe. "Ruth," I said softly, "I appreciate you caring. Truly. But it was a joke. A bad one." She shook her head so hard her glasses almost fell off. "This is why children should not play with such nonsense," she muttered. "They behave like criminals, and then act surprised when police arrive." The officers held up their hands. "All right," the shorter one said. "We understand it might be a misunderstanding, but we still need to verify everything. Please move aside so we can look around." "Of course," I said. But as they stepped forward, something unexpected happened. Lily stepped in front of them, holding her hands out like a tiny guard. "Please don't take Grandma away," she said, her voice breaking. "It's all our fault. She didn't force us. We forced her." My heart ached at her words. "Sweetheart," I whispered, pulling her close, "nobody is taking me away." The taller officer knelt down to her level. "We're not here to arrest your grandma," he said gently. "We just want to understand what happened. Nobody is in trouble yet, okay? But we have to check the house. It's our job." The word, "yet," hit Lily hard. She burst into tears. I carried her aside and held her close. "It's all right," I whispered. "Everything will be fine." While the officers walked through the house, looking in rooms, opening doors, checking closets, I stood with the children in the living room. Every second felt longer than the last. I kept replaying everything in my head. My own voice calling for help. The loud jokes. The ropes. The scarf. The window wide open. Me laughing like it was harmless. I felt foolish. Very foolish. In the kitchen, the officers opened drawers. In the hallway, they checked behind the curtain. They whispered to each other in low voices, writing notes on a pad. My house felt smaller with every footstep they took. Mrs. Parker stayed by the door, arms folded, face stern, waiting for them to confirm what she believed. After a long few minutes, the officers came back into the living room. The taller one spoke. "All right. We didn't find anything concerning. The house looks safe. Nobody else is here, and you don't seem to have any injuries. So, we are willing to accept that this was a misunderstanding." I let out a slow breath I didn't know I was holding. But he wasn't finished. "However," he continued, "this prank could have gone very wrong. Someone might have broken into this house thinking they were helping. The situation could have turned dangerous for everyone involved." Ethan lowered his head. "We didn't think of that. You kids are lucky," the officer said. "Your neighbor acted quickly. If there was a real emergency, she might have saved a life." Mrs. Parker straightened up proudly. I knew something was wrong. I nodded at her. Thank you for trying to help. She sniffed. Next time, control your grandchildren. I bit my tongue. It was not the right time to argue. The shorter officer turned to me. Ma'am, as the adult in the house, you need to make better choices. A prank involving being tied up and calling for help is not safe. His words hit hard, because he was right. I was the grown-up. I should have stopped it. I understand, I said softly. We won't do anything like this again. He nodded. Good. Now we're going to fill out a quick report outside. After that, we'll leave. They stepped out, closing the door gently. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then Ethan burst into loud sobs. Lily cried harder. Max climbed onto my lap and wrapped his small arms around my neck. Grandma, he whispered, are they going to take us away? No, I said firmly. Nobody is taking anyone away. But we need to talk. I sat them all down on the sofa. You wanted to be famous, I said. You wanted people to laugh. But you must understand something important. They looked at me through tears. Some jokes are dangerous. Some pranks can hurt people even if you don't mean them to. When you play with fear, when you pretend something bad is happening, people might believe it. And then real trouble follows. They were quiet now, listening closely. I continued. I am not angry, I said. But I am disappointed in myself for letting it happen. I should have known better. I love you all too much to let anything put you in danger. They nodded slowly. We're sorry, Grandma, Ethan said. We just wanted fun. We didn't think the police would come. I know, I said, hugging him. But we learn from our mistakes. As we were talking, there was a slow knock at the door. Not loud, not strong, gentle. I stood up and opened it. The officers were back. But this time, the taller one held a clipboard. And behind him was another police officer we hadn't seen before, a woman. She stepped forward. Ma'am, she said calmly, we need to ask you a few more questions. Ethan grabbed my hand tightly. Lily whispered, Grandma, what's happening now? Max hid behind my leg. Before I could answer, the female officer stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Her face was serious, very serious. Ma'am, she said carefully, we reviewed your neighbor's statement, and there's something else we need to address. A cold feeling ran through my chest. What do you mean? I asked. The officer looked straight at me. Your neighbor said she didn't just hear you shouting. She said she saw someone behind you. My heart froze. The children went silent. Behind me. But there was no one. No one except my grandchildren. And they never stood behind me during the prank. The officer continued. She said she saw a shadow. A figure. Someone tall. Standing right behind your chair. I tried to speak, but no words came. The female officer lowered her voice. Ma'am, are you absolutely sure this was just a prank? The room went cold. The children held onto me. Because suddenly, the simple joke we made no longer felt simple. And before I could stop it, a loud thump echoed from the hallway behind us. The thump echoed through the hallway like someone had dropped a heavy box. But there was no box in that hallway. Only shoes, an umbrella stand, and an old coat rack that hadn't been touched all day. All 4 children jumped. Max gripped my hand so tight his small fingers dug into my skin. The female officer stiffened. Her hand moved toward her belt, not touching her weapon but ready, just in case. The taller officer stepped inside behind her, scanning the hallway with sharp eyes. Everyone stay here, he said firmly. Mrs. Parker, who had lingered outside, gasped and quickly backed away toward her own porch. The officer walked slowly toward the hallway. Each step made the floor creak. The house suddenly felt too quiet. Too still. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. The female officer stayed in front of us, keeping her gaze on the dark corridor. She lifted one hand, silently motioning for me to pull the children behind me. I obeyed. I didn't know what to think. My heart shook in my chest. My breathing felt thin, like there wasn't enough air in the room. I wanted to believe it was nothing. Maybe the coat rack tilted. Maybe something fell. But the look on the officers' faces said they were not taking chances. The taller officer reached the hallway and flicked on the light. Nothing. Just the old wooden floor, the coat rack, the closed bedroom doors, and the shadows stretching against the walls. He looked around, slowly, carefully. He checked the closet next to the bathroom. He opened my bedroom door. He stepped inside and scanned the room. After a few long seconds, he called out, "Nothing here." Relief washed over me, but it didn't last. Because the children were still trembling. The female officer turned to me. "Ma'am," she said softly, "your neighbor insists she saw someone standing behind you earlier. Someone who wasn't a child." I tried to steady my breath. "But that's impossible," I said. "It was just the kids and me. There was nobody else in this house." She studied my face. "Have you noticed anything strange recently? Doors opening on their own. Items moving. Windows left open." I shook my head. "No, nothing like that. I live quietly. It's always calm here." Behind her, Ethan's voice cracked. "Grandma, remember the sound we heard earlier? Before the police knocked. We thought it was just the wind." Lily grabbed his arm. "Stop. You're scaring Max." But Max already looked terrified. His eyes were wide and round. "Was somebody in the house with us?" "No," I said firmly. "No one was here. It was just a prank. Everything is fine." But even as I said it, something tugged at the back of my mind. The window had been open. The one facing the street. I always closed it to keep the evening breeze out. Did I forget today? Or did someone else open it? The officer returned from the hallway. "Everything's clear. No intruders." The female officer exhaled and lowered her hand away from her belt. The tension in the room softened, but not completely. The children still clung to me. Mrs. Parker stood outside, her arms crossed, waiting to be proven right or wrong. The female officer spoke again. "Ma'am, can you walk me through exactly how the prank was set up? Maybe there's a simple explanation for what your neighbor saw." "Yes," I said. "Of course." We all gathered in the living room. I explained step by step how we arranged the chair, how the children positioned the phone, how I sat with the scarf over my mouth, how they tied my hands loosely with the iron cord. The officers listened quietly. The female one pointed to the corner of the room. "And the children were standing over there during the recording?" "Yes," I nodded. "All three of them." "Did anyone stand behind you? Even for a second?" "No." "Could someone have walked by the window and cast a shadow inside?" I paused. "Yes," I said slowly. "Yes, that's possible." "Was the curtain open?" "Yes." "Could a person walking past the window look like they were standing behind you from a distance?" "Yes." I turned toward the door where Mrs. Parker stood. "Ruth," I said gently, "maybe you saw someone passing outside." She frowned. "No. I saw the figure inside the room. Right behind you. Tall. Dark. Standing still." My stomach twisted. The female officer turned to the children. "Kids, were you all inside the room the whole time?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "No one came inside?" she asked. They all shook their heads. Max whispered, "We didn't see anybody." The officers exchanged another glance. The taller one sighed. "Well, whatever your neighbor saw, we found no evidence of anyone else in the house. But you all need to understand something, this whole situation could have escalated badly." He looked each child in the eye. "Say you posted this online. Someone might call emergency services again. Someone might break into the house thinking they're saving your grandma. Someone could get hurt." His voice was calm but serious. "This is why we discourage fake emergency pranks. They waste resources and can lead to real danger." Ethan wiped his tears. "We're sorry." Lily sniffed and nodded. "We won't do pranks again. Ever." Max climbed onto my lap. "I don't like pranks anymore." I hugged them close. The officers finally relaxed. "Good," the taller officer said. "We'll finalize our report outside. You're not in trouble, just be more careful." As they stepped out of the house, Mrs. Parker took a long look at me. "I hope you learned something," she said sharply. "I will not apologize for trying to help." "I know," I said with a tired smile. "Thank you." She walked away, still muttering. When the door closed, I took a deep breath and looked at the children. "All right," I said softly. "Everything is okay now." But Ethan didn't look convinced. "Grandma," he whispered, "what about the shadow she saw?" Lily leaned closer. "And the thump in the hallway?" Max hid behind me again. Is someone still here? I stroked his hair. There is no one here. But inside me, something tugged again. A small, uneasy feeling. Because the window had been open wide. Because Mrs. Parker was certain. Because I hadn't cleaned behind that coat rack in months. Because the house had never felt this cold. I tried to shake the feeling away. But then something unexpected happened. As I gathered the children to sit down and calm them, I looked at the chair where I had been tied up earlier. The cord we used was hanging loosely across it. Only, it wasn't where we left it. It wasn't even in the same shape. Instead of lying in a loose coil, the cord was now pulled tight, stretched between two legs of the chair. As if someone had pulled on it. As if someone had been holding it. My heart skipped. The children didn't notice yet. But I did. And before I could decide whether to tell them or not, the front door knocked again. Not loud this time. Not angry. Not official. Just one slow, heavy knock. I turned toward the door. The children froze. Ethan whispered, "Grandma, the police already left." I didn't answer. Because this knock wasn't the police. It didn't sound like a neighbor. It didn't sound like a friend. It sounded wrong. Very wrong. The children huddled behind me. The house grew quiet again. I stepped toward the door, each foot heavy. The knock came again. Slow. Deep. Like someone wanted us to know they were still there. I reached for the handle. But just as my hand touched it, a deep voice from the other side whispered. I saw what you did. My hand froze on the doorknob. The voice was low and rough, almost like a growl swallowed inside a whisper. It pushed through the wood of the door and curled around me like cold air. I saw what you did. Every hair on my arm stood up. Behind me, the children pressed closer. Ethan grabbed my elbow. Lily held Max tightly. Even little Max stopped breathing for a moment. "Grandma," Ethan whispered, "don't open it." I didn't plan to. Not yet. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady, though my heart hammered against my ribs. Silence. Then footsteps. Slow ones. Moving away from the door. One step. Another. Then the sound faded. The house stayed quiet. Too quiet. I didn't open the door. Not when that cold feeling still wrapped around it. Not when the children clung to me like shadows. We stood in silence for almost a full minute. Finally, Ethan broke it. "Grandma, maybe it's still the police." "No," I said softly. "That wasn't them." "How do you know?" Lily whispered. I swallowed. "Because officers don't whisper like that." Max trembled in her arms. I forced myself to breathe. Forced myself to think like an adult. Forced myself to stand tall for the children. "All right," I said gently. "We're going to stay inside for now. We're not opening that door until I'm sure it's safe." But inside me, worry was growing roots. The officers had checked the house. There was no intruder. So who knocked? And who whispered those words? We moved to the living room. I locked the front door, then the back door, then checked the windows. Everything was secure. But even with all that, safety felt like a thin, fragile thing that could break with a single breath. Ethan sat on the couch. Lily held Max's hand. They watched me walk around, their eyes following every step. "Grandma," Lily said quietly, "do you think someone is trying to scare us? Like, because of the prank?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to laugh and say, "Nobody cares that much." But I couldn't lie to them. "Not now." "I don't know," I admitted. "But we're not taking chances." The uneasiness in my chest tightened. Something about Mrs. Parker's words echoed in my mind. "I saw a tall figure behind you." The officers said there was no one. But I had lived in that house for decades. Old houses don't usually make sudden new noises. Coat racks don't just move. Iron cords don't magically shift into new shapes. Something felt off. I sat down with the children. "Listen to me," I said softly. "We're going to stay together, all right? No wandering, no going off alone. Just sit close." Max climbed onto my lap. Lily curled next to me. Ethan sat on my other side. But the house wasn't quiet for long. From the hallway, a soft sound echoed again. This time it wasn't a thump. It was a scrape. A slow, dragging scrape along the wooden floor. Like something heavy was being pulled. Or dragged. Or pushed by something that didn't know how to lift it. Lily squeezed my arm. Ethan sat up straight. "That's not funny," he whispered. Grandma, tell me that's not funny. It's not, I said, my voice low. The scraping sound dragged again, louder, closer. It came from near my bedroom. Then stopped. Then started again. Scrape, scrape, scrape. My heart felt like it was skipping beats. Grandma, Max whimpered, what is that? I stood slowly, setting him down. I'm going to check, I said. Lily grabbed my hand. No, please don't go alone. I hesitated. She was right. Okay, I whispered. We'll go together. But stay behind me. We formed a small line, me in front, the children clinging behind. We took careful steps toward the hallway. Each step made the house feel smaller, like something unseen was watching, listening, waiting. When we reached the hallway, the scraping had stopped. Silence filled the air like fog. I turned the light switch. The hallway lit up. Nothing. Just the coat rack. The umbrella stand. The framed photos on the wall. Nothing moved. Nothing strange. Nothing out of place. We all exhaled at once. Maybe it was just the house settling, Ethan said, though his voice trembled. Maybe, I said, but I didn't believe it. Not even a little. We slowly backed away from the hallway and returned to the living room. All right, I said softly. Let's call your mother. She needs to know what's going on. I pulled my phone from my pocket, tapped her name, and waited. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3, then a click. But instead of her voice, all I heard was breathing. Slow, deep, heavy, not hers, not anyone I knew. I hung up immediately, my heart slamming against my ribs. Grandma, Ethan whispered. Who answered? I don't know, I said. But it wasn't your mother. Before I could make sense of that, before I could even put the phone down, something else happened. The television flickered on by itself. Static filled the screen. White noise flooded the room. The children jumped back. The remote was on the table. Nobody had touched it. The static crackled, growing louder, sharper. Then suddenly the screen changed. A video started playing. Our video. The one from the prank. The clip showed me tied to the chair, scarf over my mouth, crying out for help. But something was wrong. We had filmed from one angle. One phone. One place. But the video on the TV was from a different angle. A completely different angle. As if someone else had been recording. Inside the room, standing behind me, watching, Lily screamed. Ethan shouted and stepped back. Max covered his ears, and I felt my knees almost give out. Because in the corner of the video, faint, but clear enough to see, a tall shadow stood behind my chair. A shadow none of us had noticed. A shadow with a shape like a man. A shadow that didn't belong to any of us. I stepped closer to the TV, my breath shaking. The video paused on that shadow. Frozen, tall, silent, watching. Grandma, Ethan whispered, his voice breaking, that's the same thing Mrs. Parker said she saw. My tongue felt heavy. My throat felt dry. I tried to breathe. Before I could speak, before I could move, before I could protect the children. The front door slammed open so hard it hit the wall. All 4 of us screamed. The wind didn't do that. The police didn't do that. No neighbor could have done it quietly enough for us not to hear footsteps. Someone, or something, had opened that door. And when I turned toward it, a tall silhouette stood in the doorway. A figure made of shadow, shaped like a man but with no face, no features. Just darkness. And it stepped inside. The dark figure stepped over the threshold as if the doorway belonged to it. Tall, silent, shapeless yet clear enough to freeze the breath in our lungs. The children clung to me, trembling so hard I could feel their fear shaking through my arms. Max buried his face in my stomach. Ethan stood as if rooted to the ground, unable to blink. Lily's fingers dug into my shirt. The figure didn't walk like a person. It drifted, smooth, slow, like smoke wearing the shape of a man. The door behind it stayed wide open, but the outside world had gone strangely quiet. No wind, no birds, no sounds from the street. Just the soft hum of the television and the faint crackle of the recorded prank still paused on the screen. For a moment, I could only stare. My breath felt stuck. My legs felt weak. Then the figure tilted its head very slightly, like it was trying to see us better. "Grandma," Ethan whispered, voice breaking, what is that thing?" I couldn't answer. I didn't know. But I knew we couldn't run. The figure stood between us and the door. Going past it might be the last mistake we ever made. We stay together, I whispered. Don't move. The figure drifted one step closer. Just one. But it felt like the entire room shrank. I forced myself to speak. What do you want? I asked. My voice trembled, but I spoke anyway. My grandchildren needed to hear strength in my voice, even if I didn't feel it. The figure didn't reply. Instead, the television unpaused on its own. The video continued. Except now it wasn't the prank anymore. It wasn't even us. The screen showed the living room from moments earlier. The shadow behind my chair. The cord stretching tight. The hallway where the scraping sound came from. Someone, or something, had been recording us all day. Watching. Waiting. The figure lifted one arm. Long. Thin. Not made of flesh, made of shifting blackness. It pointed to the television. Then the voice came again. The same deep whisper we heard through the door. I saw what you did. My whole body turned cold. The prank. The fake cries for help. The calls for someone to rescue me. We had played with fear like it was a toy. And something answered. No more games, the voice whispered. The figure drifted closer. Max cried out. Lily whimpered. Ethan stepped in front of them as if he could protect them with his small body. I stepped forward too. My legs felt weak but I didn't let them stop me. Stop, I said. Leave them alone. The figure stopped. It stood inches away from me, close enough that I could feel its cold presence wrapping around my skin. Then its arm lowered slowly. You called for help, it whispered. Suddenly, I understood. It hadn't come to harm us. It hadn't come to punish us. It had come because it thought I was in danger. The figure turned its head toward the children. You hurt her. No, I shouted. They didn't hurt me. They love me. It was just a foolish joke. A mistake. They didn't know anyone would hear. They didn't know anyone would come. The figure was silent. The children held on to me, shaking, waiting, praying. You lied, the voice whispered. Yes, I said softly, tears building in my eyes. I lied. The figure stepped back slightly. People who lie face consequences. No, I said again. Not them. Blame me. I agreed to the prank. I let it happen. If someone deserves blame, it's me. But don't touch these children. They're innocent. They meant no harm. Another long silence. Long enough that every heartbeat in the room felt like a drum. Finally, the figure shifted its attention back to me. You called for help, it repeated. Yes, I whispered, but not in the way you think. You were afraid. I nodded. I was foolish. And now I'm afraid because of what we caused. But I'm asking you please, leave us in peace. The room grew colder. The lights flickered. The shadow figure stood still for a long moment as if deciding something. Then, slowly, its shape began to unravel. Piece by piece. Like smoke caught in a breeze. Its tall body dissolved into soft swirling shadow. Its arms faded. Its legs vanished. Its head dimmed into nothing. Then, with one final whisper. Do not call for help if you do not need saving. It disappeared completely. The door slammed shut behind the last wisp of shadow. The house fell silent again. The children were still glued to me, but the cold air began to lift. The lights stopped flickering. The TV snapped off without another sound. Slowly, slowly, I let out a breath I had been holding for too long. It's gone, I whispered. The children didn't let go. Not for minutes. Not until their shaking began to calm. Ethan finally spoke. Grandma, we'll never prank like that again. Never. Lily wiped her tears. We didn't know it could attract something. Max buried his face in my stomach again. I don't want to play scary games no more. I wrapped my arms around them all. I know, I said. And we won't. We sat that way for a long time, the four of us huddled together on the couch, listening to the quiet. Later that night, after the children finally fell asleep in my room because none of them wanted to sleep alone, I walked to the living room one more time. The chair where I had been tied earlier sat still. The cord lay gently on the floor. The scarf lay folded on the couch. Everything looked normal, but I knew better. Some things can't be unseen. Some lessons come the hard way. I closed the curtains, locked the doors, sat down, and whispered a lesson to myself. Never pretend to be in danger. Someone might answer. Outside, the world looked peaceful again. Inside, the house felt safe. But that night, as I turned off the lights and lay beside my grandchildren, I kept the words of the shadow close to my heart. Do not call for help if you do not need saving. And in that moment, I knew we would never play with fear again. Not in my house. Not with my children. Not with the unknown listening. If you want more stories like this, tell me in the comments. Click subscribe so you never miss the next chapter, and hit like to keep this story alive. Your support helps these stories keep growing.